Have you realized that delicious, mouth-watering fruit is not too difficult to grow? Here is somebody who has probably grown a greater variety of the highest standard than anyone known today. To Fred Streeter, gardening has been his life. His enthusiasm and great knowledge has inspired thousands of people. Here he is to help you.
What a pity fruit's not grown more in the small private garden. Tons of good, wholesome fruit should be produced each year, and every garden should have at least a few fruit trees and bushes, and we've such wonderful heavy cropping and good quality varieties to choose from these days. And when you start, go to a good nurseryman and get his advice on which to grow. It's to his advantage to give you all the help that he can. Now, starting from scratch, it pays to cultivate the ground thoroughly. Remember, it's to last for some years, and with apples and pears, a lifetime. Make sure that the drainage is sound, and always keep the fruit together, and you'll find it very much easier to care for, too. Never dot it about all over the place. And should you have any bare walls or fences, clothe them with a few climbing fruits, which would soon cover the walls and give you luscious fruits. Even red currants can be grown this way, and allow them to hang on the north side till December. Of course, in many gardens you can't choose the site that you'd like, but with care, well, you can find fruit that will soon settle in and do well. And the one thing to avoid is any large trees. With them overhead, well, it's hopeless. And try and select ground sloping towards the south. Don't plant in a valley if you can possibly help it, because spring frosts are apt to be troublesome, and keep away from east winds. These are the two worst enemies. Most soil, is greatly improved with an additional dressing of lime at about 8 ounces to the square yard. And I remember when we used to dress the ground with a large amount of chalk, and it used to last 20 years. But in small gardens, we'll use 8 ounces to the square yard every 3 years. And tree fruits, well, they should always be planted in the sun if possible. Don't add any animal manure at the start. Rather give a light mulch to keep the moisture around the roots. Bone meal, potash and nitrogen, they're the most important to help bring the fruitlet buds along. 8 ounces of bone meal to the square yard and 4 ounces of potash and nitrogen. And aim at a real stocky fruit wood. Feed when established with manure if you like. Now, you really must start off with a few rows of strawberries. And the Royal Sovereign variety, well, that still holds its own. Make sure that you've a certified virus-free strain, and I find Talisman a good one to follow on. The soil, well, that'll take all the manure that you can give it, plus bone meal, 4 ounces, and sulphate of potash, 1 ounce to the square yard. Plant in August, 13 inches apart, and 2 feet between the rows, and always keep the soil well up to the crowns as they lift and the roots come to the surface after flowering. Put either a straw mat or a clean straw tucked up tight to the plant for the fruit to lie on nice and clean, and place the net over for protection against birds. And be careful not to tread on any young layers that you may want. For the finest fruit, 2 years is long enough to keep each bed. Gooseberries, they fruit mainly on 2-year-old branches, and this is a good fruit for cordons, or in a small garden, 1 stem to a 5-foot stake. And you can use them, for cooking and gradually leave the best fruits for dessert. Green caterpillars are their enemies, but a good dusting with pyrethrum powder or some other insecticide that you fancy, that soon settles them. Leveler, early sulphur and careless are the first-rate varieties. The Merton thornless blackberry, oh, that's a beauty. Oh, that's well worth growing, especially on a fence. Training the young shoots in every year and allow the branches 18 inches to 2 feet apart and cut out the old fruiting canes as soon as the crop finishes. Give them a good mulch with manure every year because they're very heavy feeders. And then, of late years, raspberries have increased in favour. No garden is now worthy of the name without a few rows, and the Moulin strains, they're excellent. And they're surface rooting, and a good mulch in the spring, well, that keeps them healthy and free fruiting. Cut the old fruiting canes out once they're cleared of their crop, and never allow many canes to grow up every year. Keep them at 15 inches apart and give them a few good soakings during growing time. They'll take as much water as you can give them, you know. Now, apples are another must for cooking and dessert. Grow them on the dwarfing stocks for small gardens. Trees are too large. Grown as cordons, well, you can get early fruiting apples of the best quality without trouble. Planted 2 feet apart, it's surprising, you know, the quantity that you can produce, and grow about 3 varieties of both cookers and dessert. In a really small garden, well, you can grow a family tree, you know, with 8 varieties, 5 dessert and 3 cookers. That'll suit you, won't it? Pears, well, they need plenty of sun and water. And plant double grafted varieties. They fruit so much earlier. But I wouldn't waste growing them on cold clay land. They don't like that at all. Now, Doyen de Comis, Pitmaston Duchess, and Josephine de Malines, that's a French one, but she's a good dessert. They are first-rate varieties. Now, plums, well, they need a fair amount of room, and a specimen tree growing on the lawn, oh, they'll often give you wonderful crops. And you know, you can't beat a Victoria, funnily enough. And say what you like, you know, you can't beat your own grown fruit. It's lovely.
Dear Fred Streeter, during a long life he has enjoyed every minute of his gardening.